Good evening. I wanted to do a short video with respect to one of the children on the indictment, and that is baby G. I'm going to have to be a bit circumspect about certain aspects I'm talking about here, but it's just something that came up when I noticed some things that some accounts have been tweeting on Twitter lately. So just to refresh your memory, in case you don't know, baby G was a baby girl, and there were three counts on the indictment in respect of baby G. That's counts 7, 8 and 9, which are 3 attempted murder charges, and Lucy Letby was found guilty for the first 2 attempted murder charges, which were said to have occurred on the actions were said to have occurred on the 7th of September 2015, the second one being the 21st of September 2015. And the third one, Lucy Letby was found not guilty of, and that was also on the 21st of September in the afternoon. That's count 9, and she was found not guilty of that by the jury. I'm just reading now from the Hereford Times, from an edition of that in October 2022, a report looking at child G. It says here Lucy Letby was said to have attempted to murder child G on 3 separate occasions in September 2015. September the 6th, the date before the alleged first attack, was a significant date, with 100 days passing since the youngster's birth, it says. But in the early hours of the following day, the Crown says, Lucy Letby fed an excessive amount of milk to child G through a nasogastric tube, and also probably injected air. So that's the means by which the attempted murder was said to have happened. And the same thing applies to the attack on the 21st of September. It says that child G vomits then on a nearby chair and on the floor, apparently, it says here. She had suffered a collapse and was not breathing. She was moved back to the hospital, which was where she was born. Which is Arrow Park Hospital. Arrow Park Hospital. That was where baby G was born, and she was the most premature baby that is listed in the list of charges on the indictment, and she was born on May the 31st, 2015, at only 23 weeks and 6 days gestation. At the age of 13 weeks old, she was transferred to the Countess of Chester Hospital. So that would be 91 days old. So a short time after that, the night of the 6th of September leading into the 7th, which would be her 100th day of life, nurses had planned a small celebration, it says here, and I'm reading now from the Wirral Globe report. It is said that on that night shift leading it into the 7th, that, as I said before, Lucy Letby allegedly injected milk and air into the child G's stomach down the nasogastric tube. So baby G, on the 7th, she was transferred back to Arrow Park, which is a level 3 unit where she'd been born. And then she returned again to the Countess of Chester on September the 16th. And then 5 days later, the prosecution said that Lucy Letby attempted to murder baby G again by means of overfeeding of milk via a nasogastric tube. And then the third charge, and I'm reading from the Hereford Times here, before the court case, before the court case last year was concluded. It said that in the mid-afternoon a nurse responded to Lucy Letby's shout for help and noticed that a monitor had been switched off while the child was struggling to breathe. The results of whatever happened at the hospital, both at Arrow Park and probably more importantly at the Countess Chester Hospital, very sadly has left child G with very severely disabled. I understand she has a quadriplegic cerebral palsy, which is awful, isn't it, really, for the poor girl and her family. But it's about what's caused that. I mean, apparently she'd had a number of transfusions while originally at Arrow Park, blood transfusions, because of being so premature, 23 weeks and 6 days. She'd also had bleeding from the throat. And when she went back to Arrow Park after the 7th September, she was thought to be suffering from sepsis as well. So there was markers for sepsis there as well. Just returning to the third charge briefly, that of attempted murder. I'm just reading now from a Daily Mail article. I know many of you will know this, but it was found at the trial last year that it says here, Dr. John Gibbs, one of the consultants, a paediatrician at the Countess of Chester Hospital for 20 years, acknowledged that he and his registrar colleague David Harkness should have handed over the child's care to a nurse. He admitted that he'd made a serious error in leaving the sick infant alone behind a screen with her monitor switched off. The two medics mentioned there had left baby G lying on a treatment trolley moments after carrying out a difficult cannulation procedure to give her fluids and antibiotics. But crucially, it was Lucy Letby, 32 at the time, or 32 now when this report was she was in her mid-20s at the time. It was Lucy Letby who found the infant and shouted for help. So it was Lucy Letby that intervened and acted very positively. Baby G's designated nurse rushed in to see her collapsed and not breathing. So, and Lucy Letby was carrying out emergency treatment to revive her. So Lucy Letby acted very swiftly and to revive baby G there. So that was an attempted murder charge. And there was a nurse that gave testimony in the trial last year saying that she'd spoken to Dr. Gibbs and he'd apologised outside of the room and said, she'd said, that you'd left the monitor off, and then he acknowledged that in the court case last year. What strikes me about this is, if that was just the only charge on the indictment, and it's a very serious charge, attempted murder, it's got all the way to court. And Lucy was found not guilty of this, obviously. It's giving you a sense of how much they investigated. They just threw that in there just to see if they could add that in, without the barest or any investigation into it whatsoever. Had they interviewed the other nurse, they would have found that, what came out at the trial, wouldn't they? But they didn't do that. They just threw it in to see if it would work. That's how easy an attempted murder charge was obviously completely pointlessly brought. They all are, of course, they all are wrongly brought. But this is, with that evidence obviously just waiting to be heard by the other nurse who said, no, Lucy Letby saved that baby's life, actually, after a mistake that was acknowledged by the consultant, Dr. Gibbs. He put that baby's life in danger. He did. And he apologised for it. And it was Lucy Letby that saved the life of that baby. It's just the fact that how on earth could that become an attempted murder charge? When to find out that information was obviously so readily available that that other nurse was there to say, oh, she spoke to him outside and he apologised to her, i.e. Gibbs. And he acknowledged, he said at the trial, he weaseled his way out and said, I don't have any memory of it, but if you say it, it must be so. So we've got Lucy Letby there saving the life of a baby that on 2 other occasions they say she's trying to kill the baby, baby G, with this absurd idea of overfeeding of milk. I won't go too far into that, but people have, from a medical background, just said that that's just absurd. It's an absurdity as an idea. But the reason I'm making this video is to do with, what will I call them now, I have to be careful how I mention this now, because it's to do with, when I mentioned this subject and wasn't careful before the video was taken down, I'm talking about inoculations. I'll use that word, inoculations. I'm just reading now from the Thall inquiry transcript for the 18th of September, and it's the mother of baby G speaking, in which she says, I'm not going to read too much of that, and this isn't to go too much into this. I'm just interested in the, or focusing on what might be another potential cause. The mum for baby G says here that she says, we weren't told what had happened. This is in relation to the 21st of September 2015, in the morning. We weren't told what had happened, so I thought she may have become unwell due to just having received her immunisation shots, which made me feel guilty. So just to remind you, baby G was one of the most premature babies, 23 weeks and 6 days. But nonetheless, it is the policy of the NHS to give, irrespective of how premature, what the gestation period of a baby is, to give the vaccinations according to the same schedule as babies that are born to term. That's what I found out. And it's been confirmed by people who are nurses and midwives. So with baby G, she's had, at the point of we can put aside the third charge, obviously, because that was Lucy Letby was found not guilty for that, because it was Dr. Gibbs' fault for leaving that monitor off. In fact, as I said, she saved the baby's life there, in all likelihood. But up to the morning of the 21st of September 2015, that's going to make baby G 114 days old. I've worked that out based on her age when she, well, we're told her date of birth, but also we're told how old she was when she arrived at Countess of Chester for the first time, before going back between the dates of the 7th and the 21st of September for a short period. So baby G would have had, at age 8 weeks, so this would have been in Arrow Park, she would have had the 6-in-1 dose, so that's 6 separate vaccinations in one, and that would be for diphtheria, tetanus, whooping cough, polio, haemophilus, influenza type B, hepatitis B. Should have also had meningitis B dose 1. That 6-in-1 is the first dose of that, the first 6. Should also would have had rotavirus inoculation, dose 1. That's all at 8 weeks at Arrow Park. and she's obviously incredibly premature. Somebody raised the point as to, are the doses smaller according to weight and according to prematurity? I can't find anything out about that, but I'm going with the fact that the vaccination timeline is given to very premature babies in the same way that it is to babies that are born at full term. So those are the age 8-week vaccinations. At 12 weeks, which is, it depends what, in what day is it on to the day? Is it to the day? But at 12 weeks, there's a dose 2 of the 6-in-1, so that's a further 6 vaccinations essentially in one. Then there's a pneumococcal vaccine, and then there's a dose 2 of the rotavirus. So we're up to 16 separate vaccines have gone into the baby then. Now that may have happened at Arrow Park. We know that baby G was transferred at 13 weeks. Is it possible that those vaccinations were done, those inoculations were done at Countess of Chester? It's possible. I don't know. But it would have been either or, wouldn't it? Hopefully it wouldn't have been doubled up. I'm not saying that, but right. So that's at 12 weeks. So 12 weeks is 84 days, and we know that the 7th of September, going into the 7th of September, is baby G's 100th day of life. So depending exactly when in that week, I know it says 12 weeks, but do they do it exactly to the day? We're looking at around about a couple of weeks at the most, or at the least, I should say. No, at the most, from the vaccinations given at 12 weeks to that first bout of vomiting on the 100th day, on the 7th of September 2015. So there is a bit of a gap there, but there's a third group of vaccinations, inoculations, that come in at age 16 weeks. So 7 times 16 is 70, 42. That's 112 days. That's 112 days if you do it right to the day, which is going to put it, if it was right to the day, that would put it at the 19th of September 2015. And then on the 21st of September, in the night time, in across the night, into the morning, that's the alleged second attack with this overfeeding of milk, which hasn't been proven in any way whatsoever. But what is it that might have caused the baby's vomiting? I mean, as we've said, the baby had a lot of issues. It had certain markers for sepsis. It had these blood transfusions. It had bleeding from the throat area, an earlier point in her life. So at 16 weeks, that's 112 days, baby G would have had the third dose of the 6-in-1 plus the second dose of the meningitis B. So that puts a total of 23 inoculations, 23 separate vaccines that baby's had, who's been born at 23 weeks and 6 days. That's how much that baby's system has had to take on board, as well as the struggle of being that premature and all the difficulties there, and the blood transfusions the baby's had, etc., etc. So back to the dates, 16 weeks is 112 days, and this period of vomiting in which the baby is said to have aspirated the vomit, and so that stopped breathing, and that's what's cut the oxygen off to the poor baby's brain, and it's led to cerebral palsy, brain damage, is that that's a maximum of 2 days. The baby's had that that third lot of shots. But if it was done, it's possible it could have been less than 24 hours before, couldn't it? You know, do they always do it exactly to the day? It depends how they're counting it, and it's quite possible that would have been done. It could have been done the day before, or even the evening before. We don't know, but it could well have easily have been within 24 hours of that second bout of vomiting that then is turned into Lucy Letby force feeding milk and possibly air, because they don't know, they just threw everything at it. I'm just wondering whether there's and that actually was baby G's mother's first impulse, is to say, I felt guilty because was it because of the inoculations? Is that why she's become unwell again? That was her first impulse. 23 vaccinations over that period of time for a very, very premature baby. I'm going to look for another document here, which is in relation to baby I think it is. This is testimony from the mother of child I, a different child, in respect of immunisations. She says here, when our baby was, and it's redacted, number of weeks old, I inquired about her getting her immunisations when she returned home, but the hospital said they had given them to her while she was in the hospital. That's counted as a Chester hospital. A female doctor, name unknown, did prepare us by saying that our baby's blood cells would rise, white blood cells would rise after she'd been immunised. Our baby had her immunisations on the 5th of the October 2015. Afterwards, Dr. Matt told us that her bloods had risen more than they'd expected and that they were going to screen her. So there we have an example of a bad reaction or an unforeseen reaction to immunisation from another baby. There's testimony given here from the mother of baby I, that it had affected it had an effect on the baby's blood, on the readings here, and that they were going to screen her because of that. So that's just something I wanted to add in there. I'm not saying I know, obviously I don't know whether all those injections for baby G, for such a premature baby, had an effect and may have contributed to her, to that period of vomiting and potentially other things that flowed from that. But it's a possibility, I think. I know it's something that people don't really want to look into that much because this subject is a very contentious subject. I've seen some videos and they're quite hard to find because I think YouTube would probably take them off, but on other hosting sites where parents are very absolutely convinced that the immunisations, the shots, the jabs given to the babies when they're very young, have sometimes parents have believed that it's caused the death of their children. There are certain cases such as that, and other issues. Somebody on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, I'm sorry, made the point that the collapses in the cases of the two babies, the two children of Sally Clark, who was wrongly convicted killing her own children, that their collapses followed very soon after being inoculated, given vaccines. That's some time ago. I'm not sure what vaccines they were given, what immunisations, so-called. So that's the reason for talking about this, is to, I don't know how that can be investigated in any further way, but I think it's a possibility. I just want to restate that the 21st of September, it's quite possible that second period of vomiting, and there were markers there was suspicion of sepsis, and that's what Arrow Park went with when baby G went back to Arrow Park from Countess of Chester Hospital after the 7th of September 2015. They were going with the idea that there were issues to do with sepsis there. And then baby G comes back to the Countess of Chester on the 15th, I think it is. And then there's this episode of vomiting and difficulty breathing and stopping breathing, which very sadly has led to the disabilities that baby G has. But the immunisations, and this will be now the 16-week immunisations, and I suppose you've got to consider how those immunisations are building up in the system over that period of time, but specifically the 16-week immunisations, it's quite conceivable that they were given within a 24-hour, 48-hour maximum if they went by the day, but it's quite possible it could have gone later into that same day, so it could have been around 24 hours, possibly even less, between those immunisations being given. And we know that they were given because the mother of baby G says that it was the first thought in her mind was that, oh, has my baby had this bad reaction to the immunisation? She said, and I felt guilty then. In other words, guilty for saying yes to having them. So it could have been well within 24-hour period between having this third lot of immunisations and this bout of vomiting that the baby had. So obviously I'm not saying that they were definitely the cause of that, or it's an unknown, but it's a potential, isn't it? It's a possibility. It's certainly a possibility. To end with now, I just wanted to mention something that came up in that is in the latest Private Eye article by Dr. Phil Hammond, in which it's been exposed that a questionnaire was sent out to nurses that would have worked with Lucy Letby during this 2015-2016 period. And a certain nurse gave answers to this questionnaire, and it's been found that probably in all likelihood, because of the answers given, that the Thall inquiry doesn't want her to give testimony, at least at this time, but it seems to be blocking this nurse's testimony. But I'll just read through an excerpt from the Private Eye article related to this nurse's questionnaire sent out by the Thall inquiry to the nurses. It says here, nurse's questionnaire. Prior to the inquiry, that's Thall inquiry, a Rule 9 questionnaire for nurses was sent out to all those on the 2015-16 staff list. MD, that's the column that Dr. Phil Hammond writes in Private Eye, it's called MD, has seen the responses of one of Lucy Letby's colleagues. So one of the questions is this: how would you describe the relationship between medical professionals in the hospital in 2015 and 2016? The answer the nurse gives is as follows: My view of the trust and so-called medical professionals is prejudiced by the horrendous way they treated Lucy. Second question. Did you have any concerns or suspicions about the conduct of Lucy Letby? Answer. I had no concerns or suspicions about Lucy's conduct. She was an exemplary nurse who is completely innocent of all the alleged crimes. So this is somebody writing now, answering that question the Thall inquiry is sent out to her. But Thall doesn't want to invite this person to give testimony to the inquiry, because it's inconvenient for them, isn't it? There's a third question here. It's more than inconvenient. It's just, they just don't want to hear this. Third question to the nurse is, were you aware of any suspicions or concerns of others about the conduct of Lucy Letby? And the answer the nurse gives is, I do remember becoming aware that certain consultants appeared to be trying to make Lucy a scapegoat for the increased number of deaths / collapses. It's very powerful, isn't it? And that's why they don't want this nurse. They sent her the questionnaire, presumably with the thought behind it that perhaps you'd invite people to give evidence to the inquiry, wouldn't you? People that were working with Lucy Letby. And so another little bit from that same article about that same nurse. It says here, inquiry response. The questionnaire that nurse filled in was returned to the Thall inquiry on the 9th of April 2024. On 15th of July, the nurse received a disappointing email from the inquiry team, which said as follows, quote, we can confirm that you are, and in capitals, that you are not currently named on the list as an individual from whom the inquiry wishes to hear oral evidence. So they didn't want to risk that nurse going there and then saying more under further questioning, did they? This obviously speaks volumes about the Thall inquiry. We already know a lot about its limitations and its agenda, I think. But the caveat there being that there is information coming out that wasn't known before and that wasn't heard at the trial by the jury. But nonetheless, this is very stark, isn't it? That nurse gave those answers to that questionnaire. She gets an email back saying, we can confirm that you are not currently named on the list to give your oral evidence. They're worried about what else she might say, because it derails the purpose of the inquiry, which is to underline the convictions, to underline effectively the miscarriage of justice. But it may be exposing things, not so much unintentionally, but by default, in a sense, by asking other people for evidence, and the consultants are due to be giving evidence soon. No doubt they'll make some slip-ups. There's another issue, is that, as far as we're aware, I believe that Dowie Evans has not been asked to give evidence, which I think is an appalling oversight, but it's not an oversight, it's deliberate policy, isn't it? That's what I've heard, that he's not been asked, which is dreadful. And another revelation about how political, how controlled, how contrived, and how agenda-bound that Thall inquiry is, that they wouldn't invite Evans and put him under some proper pressure about what he's done here, and let let him reveal himself further, which is what we need. But we can hope that the consultants will do that. I hope so. And I believe they're going to be called to give evidence to this inquiry. So the main ones being Breary and Jayaram, but probably Gibbs as well, and maybe one or two of the others. I hope they ask Alison Timmis, the consultant there, and ask her what she meant by that email that she sent to Tony Chambers. Ask her to expand on it, where she says children are going to die here because it's not a safe unit. It's chaos. It's dangerous. It's not safe. Children are going to die. That's what they should be asking her along as well. Will they studiously avoid inviting her in the same way that they avoiding inviting this nurse who gave those answers to that questionnaire? I suppose we'll see. And so then, to conclude, I don't know what anybody else might think about this schedule of inoculations of such a premature baby. I think it sounds extraordinary myself. And the closeness in time from those 16 weeks inoculations to that, whatever caused the vomiting on the 21st of September. I'm not saying it was it, but could it have had a hand in that, in conjunction with infection as well? So there we are. I know it's a subject area that a lot of people don't like talking about, and YouTube don't like people talking about anything to do with inoculations, unless it's a sort of to praise them uncritically and just to say, oh, it's all great and everything's great about all this. I've got suspicions about all of them. And as I said, there are cases in which certainly parents and others feel that babies have been harmed and even killed by these inoculations. So there is that as well. I don't know if anyone's going to look further into it, and to what, how can they? I don't know if they can. There's such a kind of a grip on protecting. They're so powerful, the pharmaceutical companies, in controlling the story, aren't they? And that obviously bleeds down to YouTube and Google. In fact, it's very hard to find stories about it. You've got to go to sites like BitChute and things like that to find videos with testimonies from parents who believe the children have been very badly affected or even died very soon after having certain immunisation shots. And we're not even going there, and I'm not even going there in this video in respect of autism, but that's another whole issue in and of itself, isn't it? Albeit related. Well, thank you very much, and all the best. Bye-bye.